Hello, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And at the end of the broadcast, I'm going to show you how you can obtain a book and some cassettes to teach you that very title. You must control your emotions, otherwise your emotions will control you and you'll be out of control like a driverless car. And I think if you look around in the world today, you'll see a lot of driverless cars, all banging into each other. The world would be a beautiful place if we all had love for one another, which means if we didn't react to one another. But many of us believe that loving is reacting. And tonight perhaps, and future evenings, I will show you that you must become unemotionally involved. You know, we must not dare to think any longer that love is an emotion or compassion is a feeling. Somewhere beyond being involved in your thoughts and feelings, there's a state of knowing all this as I say it to you now. And how far have you come? What has happened to your life because of all your involvements? After you've been involved in this person, this man, you're involved in this woman, you're involved in your job, you're involved in your work, you're involved in your arts and sciences and your music and your culture. I say you must be unemotionally involved. And what happens when you're emotionally involved is that you lose control. You know, a lot of us are afraid to become involved because we know that we've lost control. And we have groups, therapy groups, that try to help us overcome that fear. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? See? And they teach you to overcome that fear to your detriment. You're naturally afraid to become emotionally involved because you give power to other people to control your mind and your whole future and your identity. Okay, we have questions, all right? I was going to talk. I thought we had a dull crowd here this evening, but it looks like they're beginning to stir here. All right, the natives are stirring. Okay, all right. Maybe we want to talk on this subject.
Yes, I can see that people. That's the reason that they drink and take drugs, so that they can be emotionally involved.
Exactly, to enhance the emotional involvement. Does anybody know what other benefit in the enhancement of the emotions to involve, what other benefit that a person gets from that?
To lose yourself.
Delusions? To lose yourself.
You lose your pain.
Lose your pain. What is the nature
and
of
your uncomfortableness.
What is the nature? You're discomfortable.
Yes, you're uncomfortable, and you know that you feel like you're not. You feel like you're in a goldfish bowl, and you can't touch anything. There's this glass between you and people, so you try to
break down the barrier between you and people.
Break down the barrier, so you could be like
so you can reach across,
right,
and touch someone.
Yes.
And someone can. What is happening when you touch someone? Does anybody know when you reach out to someone? What are you getting? You must be getting something. And should you be getting
support.
it? Should you be getting support? What support?
You're getting support for the way you are, or the way that they are, and you feel like you want to be like them, so you get support from them.
Well, a little diffused. Anybody else has a better definition of this? In other words, when you reach out and become emotionally involved, let me just frame it again. When we reach out and become emotionally involved with someone, what precisely is happening? Now, pardon?
Exchanging identities.
Exchanging identities is correct, but then the audience, that's too far ahead. That's too far ahead for everybody. But we'll get to it.
Justification.
Justification? But when you say justification, go ahead.
When I was younger and I had girlfriends, there was a certain type of girl I would always be attracted to, and that's the type that I had to go up and put my arms around. But if they came up and put their arms around me, I didn't want that. I would reject that kind of girl.
Why was that?
Because I wanted to pull something out of them.
You want to initiate that. You see, we are talking about corruption now. In other words, if someone does that to you first, it makes you the ripple in the pond and not the pebble that causes the ripple. You are the effect of someone's cause. So it's like someone saying, oh, you're a wonderful person, and giving you compliments before you've earned it. See? So therefore, that takes control away from you, because when you come down to accept that love or that acceptance, it reinforces a pride. But pride will become dependent, because to come down to accept affection or love, this mysterious something for which we're involved, is also coming away from reality, as I've said before, to be our own reality. We become, in a sense, a miniature God in our own realm, and now dependent, guilty as hell. So that's called, we're being seduced when someone does it to us first. When a girl goes, hello, honey, hello, big boy, right?
Right.
And you respond to that, and you're being seduced if you come out of your tree. You cross the border from West Germany into East Germany. You come under a different authority. Because of course, if you invade East Germany yourself, you have more control, right?
Right.
So he said, that men very often will violate their little children. They violate innocent women. And they like that because they like corrupting something. Their ego has become dependent upon corrupting something first, and then for being the master of what it's corrupted.
It's
See?
kind of like torturing frogs when you're
Yes,
a kid
but
or something.
but you have to go on corrupting to draw something from
Right.
the violated person, and the violated person has a problem also from that point onwards with being a victim with that type of human being.
Right.
But we are getting away. It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you did it to me.
I see this as a problem.
It is a problem. Because we like to corrupt one another, because we draw from the emotion. In other words, we dig into them. It's like killing something and taking something of its essence. After all, if you have a lamb, you can't eat it living. Even the lion has to kill it, and then it devours it. So what we do is when we violate something, traumatize somebody, we're able to kill it in a manner of speaking, a spiritual thing, and then devour them spiritually. We take their essence into ourselves.
Yeah.
And we become more, if we get away with that sort of thing, we become more and more ruthless, and people become more and more afraid.
Right.
See? And they will they'll be frightened easily and give way and allow themselves to be bullied. Because it will seem to them, when they give in to you and give up their substance, that they're being rewarded for some kind of sacrifice and compassion and goodness. Is that right?
Yes.
But there's
See?
always someone that's above you
Liberals
taking
will-
that energy that you've gotten from them.
You got it? You got it. And there's always someone standing over you who who've done it to you.
That's
It's
right.
called a dog-eat-dog society. Of course, we are getting away from emotional involvement, although that is the subject, and we've discussed this before. And I don't mind going over it again, because we always have new audience, and it's always worth revisiting. Agreed? Because this kind of thing cannot be stated enough times.
Yeah.
Now, but let's go back to the subject again. What benefit do you get by being emotionally involved with someone? Whether you cause the response or you are the respondent. You know what I mean? That lady right over there.
I caused a very bad thing for that time. It was a long, long time. It was 40 years ago, during the war. And she
Europe?
was in Europe. She was a girl, and I was already married and have a 2-month-old baby. And the Russian came in, and he pulled out a hand grenade.
Hand grenade?
Wanted to kill us when he does not get a girl.
I didn't follow that, I'm sorry.
He want to have a girl. And my girlfriend, and I must have been so selfish. that I had my baby, and I said, why don't you go with him? And since then, I am bullied, and I wanted to make right, and I just couldn't.
In other words, you suggested for your own safety,
Yes.
for your girlfriend to submit to this man, this Russian.
This what I wanted to know. Did I do it for my baby, or did I do it for myself?
Well, that's a very difficult question.
Yes,
It's been troubling you.
since then.
And how has this affected you throughout your life? Have you
I was always sick.
have you always sick, but
Sick.
have you always allowed yourself to be bullied?
Yes, from everybody.
In other words,
This I kept inside. I never could get it out from my mind. And now
so the
since
Russian came in, and he wanted
a girl.
a girl, and in other words, you didn't want that girl to be you.
Yes.
In other words, so you
But
sacrificed.
he first he put his finger on her. Then he came to me, and I have my baby. I was still bleeding, 2 months old baby. I didn't have any doctor, and something went wrong.
Yes, that's a very difficult.
And
It's a very difficult.
then I sent that girl, Kathy, why don't you go with him? That's what I said.
Well, you were acting very instinctively, weren't you?
Yes.
And very protectively to your baby. Am I right?
This
No,
I
don't think. I'm just intuiting now. I don't believe that you acted selfishly. I think you acted as a mother would, protecting her baby, thinking of nothing more than this baby,
Yeah.
the innocence. In other words, it's a choice between the woman is more able to take care of herself
Yeah.
and the child, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
A 2-month-old baby. Now, I'll tell you what's wrong. Let me tell you what's wrong. I think if I would have been in your position, and I had known what I know today,
Yes.
things might have been different. But let us say I don't know quite as much to be wise enough to know how to handle that situation, so it would come out that neither one of you were hurt. It is quite possible to have handled that without either one of you got hurt, because you both reacted with fear. And in your infantile, your youthful state, you know no other way of handling anything
Well,
except without fear and submission. We've
it
always
bothered me.
reacted to fear and submission to authorities.
Yeah.
See? And you try to get the monkey off your back by putting it on her. I can understand that. It's the nature of the fallen creature.
Why since I started
And I must-
to meditate,
Let me tell you
then
something.
I stopped to, my soul get lighter since I started to meditate.
And there's a reason for this. But my son, who is in the used car business, and he buys some wrecked cars and takes the parts from some and fixes them and makes nice cars out of them, and with low mileage on it and everything. Anyway, he was in the auction, and this great big powerful biker type person, and he kept on banging his car and putting more dents into it. He said, "Hey man," he said, "would you mind not putting dents in my car? I just bought it." He says, "You want to make something out of it?" And there's 2 or 3 of them. They're big. He says, "No, I just want you to not put dents in my car." Boom, another one, right? You want to make something. See, that's another situation. But Alan holds his cool, and he's always done this. And he said, "Look, man, that's all I wanted you to do. I don't want to make anything out. I just want you not to put dents in my car." Boom. And so I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said, "Look, man, my wife is coming, and you know, my girlfriend is coming." And he made up a little story. And he made up a story which was a total lie. But it brought out compassion, because he understood this condition that Alan was supposed to have created.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, man, we understand. Hey, go ahead, and we'll have a beer," and you see, and let him go. There's a way of dealing with everything. There's a way of to diffuse the situation. There's a way of dealing with the beast, with wisdom and calm. You could not have helped yourself. Most people in this room, if a Nazi or a Russian under those conditions would come in, you would naturally react and freeze and submit. You'd rebel, bang, submit. The choice is to submit. But there's another way. There are people who lived in concentration camps who were so dignified that the Nazis didn't kill them. They somehow, there's something about responding with fear that makes it, if you give in to your child, let's say you give in to your child, you give your child his own way, do you know what happens to that child? He becomes more violent. And he feels, by giving in to him, it's like praising him, it creates a conflict. It encourages the violence in him, it encourages the pride. And the pride feels as though that you were, because you've given in to this child, because you give in to the bully, it does two things to the bully. It makes him more of a bully, because the only sense of bravery he can have is to be more ruthless. That's number one, right?
Yeah. And she got the bully, not me, later on.
She got a bully for a husband or something, right?
No, for me. She always, on the whole, she never, I think, I'm sure, she never forget what I did to her. She always lets me know.
Oh, she's still around.
She's still around. I let her bring after me to America. I tried everything.
You try to help her.
Yes.
You try to placate your conscience, and you do the right thing.
My conscience was just killing me.
Well, let's explore it, and I'm going to show you how. You said you already feel lighter since you meditated.
Yes.
And there's a
Yes.
reason for this. But I think just for the fun of it, and for the interest for the rest of the audience, we need to explore this idea of, giving in to a person, and giving in to your children, and making them bullies, and making yourself a coward. See, because you form part of the problem. When you give in to a person, you actually make the person more powerful in their wrong. And you give them the right to make demands on you they never would have otherwise have made.
Yes.
And on top of that, you create such a conflict in them that you have actually been part of the reason why they've become more animal rather than human. And their conscience, they have a conscience too. The Nazi and the Russian has a conscience too. And they have the same thing going on inside them, whether it's a Russian or whether it's an Iranian. It doesn't make it who it is. We all have the same mechanisms.
Yeah.
And then when they feel their pride growing, they begin to feel like they are really something, and they begin to hate you more. See? And they hate you for two reasons. Why? Because it makes you a bully, and it makes them more powerful and more important to themselves. It makes them more human and you an animal. See? But at the same time, it creates a conflict inside them, for which they blame you for. They feel like somehow you're responsible for the pain that they feel, and they want to kill you for it, because the only way they could stop you giving in to them and creating, and them swelling up with pride, see, and conceit, with this tremendous pain, they feel like the only way they can stop it is by killing you or hurting you. I've seen children who have loving mothers, liberal mothers, and mothers are very supportive, and the children become bullies. And what do the children do? They're more violent with their parents. And why are they violent with their parents? Because they want to stop them from loving. And what do the parents do? They get upset. They're angry because their children are not grateful. They don't understand what's going on inside. And then they feel guilty, and they feel they haven't loved enough. And that loving has actually become a new submission exactly like yours. You resent your tyrant, you feel guilty, and then you love it, hoping that the tyrant will love you back, and then he hates you back.
It goes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
That's the way you've been. This thing is transferred to your life,
One
hasn't
day
it?
we love each other, next day we hate each other. It goes back and forth.
Yes, you see? Because you can't, you have, ever since that day, when you didn't have the guidance
Yes.
and the discipline, which nobody has, but it causes suffering. If we survive it, we survivors don't really survive, we just exist, don't we?
Yes.
Whether it's a Russian doing it or somebody
Or
else
anybody
doing
yeah.
it. It's a typical situation. So if you would have not reacted at that time, things would have been completely different. You might have had something to say which have made stop that Russian right in his tracks, because after all, he's a human being. The trouble is, in that position where he was, and in that position where you are, instant fear, instant terror, instant submission, and immediately you start giving in to him, and he can't stop himself taking advantage. He couldn't stop himself. You sacrificed somebody else's life to preserve your own. Perfectly understandable under those conditions, and forgivable. See? As a matter of fact, truth of the matter is, if that young lady was noble, she should have volunteered to save your baby. If she had a mothering instinct in her.
She went.
She went, but it should have been her.
I felt so
it should have been her
sorry.
own idea, even in that fallen state. It needed to be her own idea.
But it hurt me because she was a virgin, and
I understand that.
I had a husband.
I understand that. So you wouldn't have been any different, in a manner of speaking. You wouldn't have been spoiled, but you would have been spoiled. Of course you would.
Maybe.
Now, as to the question of release, you've already been released.
God blessed me so much, and I don't know how. How did I get to America? I know that it was from God, a blessing somehow.
It was a blessing.
Because I was looking and I was sad inside and everything. And I went away from everybody who knew me before. And
You withdrew. In other
yes,
words, right.
and I looked and looked for everything so many years.
You looked for the answer.
Yeah.
You looked for the answer.
And one
Forgive
day,
me if I translate a
one
little.
day I heard 1 hour. On the 1 hour, you talk to men, women, and everybody on the radio, and it was me the whole hour. And I kneeled
What
down.
happened?
I kneeled down in the kitchen, and thank God that now I have found what I was looking for.
Can I just pause for a second? Look how beautiful it is for this lady. Don't you share some of her joy? See? Do you see how happy she is, and how she understood, and how when the light of understanding shines on any subject, that it dispels the mist and confusion arising from it?
And it's so light now inside.
There's a light in there.
Light. I was so heavy all the time inside. And now, if I
And that nobody can
could
describe
fly
it.
now.
No. Did you say you could die now?
Fly.
Oh, I see. Well, there's an old saying in the Orient: a man who finds the truth in the morning is not afraid to die in the evening. See, that's one of the reasons why we're all here, I hope, is that because I know this hedonistic society, this shallow society, this dog-eat-dog society, this disgusting society. I mean, America's fine, but what America's becoming is not fine. What America could become is what could emerge from discussions like this. So, do you want a valueless society? You see? You know, because that's what they're teaching in schools, no values, or mechanical values in church. You shall do this and you shan't do that. That's not human. That is only, that will do until we know better. But what we need we have to find our own values. Not our own values, meaning we invent them. But, you know, there's a scripture that says, you need not have any man teach you the truth. You see, but the Holy Spirit. And now what that means is that each human being must live by an inner light. Just like flowers, all the flowers in the world live by one light. All the trees and all the plants, they live by one light. One light nurtures them all. And that one light touches all the plants everywhere, all the time. Now, it's the same thing with human beings. We don't see the light because it's not that kind of light. The light in the world is symbolic to the flower because, you know, the flower is independent. All other creatures are dependent on the flower and the grass of the field and the trees because they're independent because they don't eat anything. But they're part earth and part heaven. And we must be part earth, but a different heaven within, a heaven within, and that kingdom of heaven is within us. And when that light shines, it takes away our fears, And it gives us a bright nature and a bright speech. And this bright speech would be similar to Jesus Christ when he was here 2,000 years ago, when the woman who was committed adultery, and they were about to stone her. You remember the dialogue. I mean, you had all been frozen in your tracks. Well, what are we going to do with her? It's the law of Israel. She's got to be stoned. He says, you're right on, man. And everybody was surprised because they were to catch him for breaking the law. Where's his compassion? He would say, don't do that, they would stone him. He says, you're right. Who is without sin? You cast the first stone. And because they were all guilty as hell, they all shrank away from the oldest, who was the most guilty, to the youngest. We go out guiltier than we came in, right? So be in our audience if you like what you heard. We'd like to dialogue with you, and be here Monday through Friday. And keep the program on the air. It's pretty sparse right now, still is, but I'm hanging in there with everything I've got. Seed money from gifts that people have given me, but it can only hold out so much. So please write to us and support us and obtain the materials, and you'll see that flashed on your screen in a few moments. Thanks for listening, and join us in the next program.
Part 2 is next.
Well, hello, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. At the end of the program, we'll be selling some books, and we'll be asking for some contributions. Sorry to say that, but I hope that when you finished your viewing and listening to what I have to say, I think you'll find it worthwhile. I mean, if this program has any value, you'll feel it in your heart. And I'm not going to use any emotions to trick you into contributing, because that is not what I want. To motivate you to do what's right is not right. To motivate you to give is not right. Giving and love must be original. It must be your own idea, and you mustn't think it's your own idea. It must come just because it's your own idea. And it must suggest it to itself. And only that giving is good to the receiver and good for the giver. I'm not saying that people haven't given me out of guilt for hating me and that sort of thing, but I have sort of discipline, and if you even drug money, probably people have given me drug money, and I hadn't known about it. And if I had known about it, I might have taken it too. But what I'm saying is there's a right way of doing everything. There's a right way of being compassionate. There's a right way of being supportive. But never must there be any motivation, any pressure. For instance, my children, I made them clean their teeth every night, but not with emotion. I didn't shock them, frighten them into one because I was too, well, I didn't have the love to be persistent until they understood it for themselves, why they should clean their teeth. And they should see it for themselves and pick it up on themselves. But most parents don't have love. We just program shock. And we wind them up, and for the rest of their life they're cleaning their teeth or rebelling, never cleaning their teeth, and their teeth are falling out. See? So either good little wind-up toys, cleaning their teeth, going to the dentist like good little goody two-shoes, or never going to the dentist and letting themselves fall apart. But our whole life is like that. We rebel, we conform, and when we get old and ugly, that's what happens when you get old. I'm sorry to say, but it doesn't have to be that way, because that's what ugly is. Being motivated, emotionally involved, taking one's direction, purpose from something external to yourself. We're not sea lions. Ooh, 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 ooh. We don't do tricks. We don't, that's not what we're here for. We're here to love each other and to, by example, by not motivating, and by letting others trying to motivate us. You know, after all, people are willful and mindless and willful, because all willful people are mindless. They don't have a mind of a person who's not willful. See, I have a will, but I'm not willful. Okay? So therefore, what I want, my will, is to do the Father's will. And if I can't get other people to do the Father's will, if I will them to do it, because then they will the Father's will, but it won't be the Father's will, it'll be my will.
They have to be willing.
Yeah, so I have to get you to be willing, but you can't get people to be willing either. So when people try to will me, what do? When people pressure me, after all people who will you have been willed. That's the will that's moving up through them, the one that's not from the Father of lights, but the Father of darkness, right? So all those people who are possessed by that will like to dominate, thinking thereby they are in control. But remember what we said in the last program. Something is already in control of them. They have the illusion, by creating a reaction, that they're in control. It's only an illusion. And by being involved with what they control, being excited, caught up with bullying and manipulating and making things happen and making people's weakness serve their greatness, they have an addictive sense of worth. So they have to become more ruthless and more manipulating. But what happens when you meet Roy Masters? It doesn't work. I don't will you back. It just, you start seeing what you're doing to me. When you start seeing what the wrong you're doing to me, what happens? Well, that seeing in itself is what I want. But if I don't have it, if I will you back, that light in me goes out. So if there's nothing in me that's alive and awake and bright and conscious, how can I, a sleeper, awaken the sleepers? If I'm awake and you can't put me to sleep, then I can awaken you to look at yourself. And when you look at yourself, you know what happens? Bingo. The relationship between you and the light that's within me, which is also within that person, I'm looking for a word. The union is made. For instance, my kids, I'll be there in just 1 second. My kids will be willful, and they get upset, trying to get upset me. That's how they get their way. If I get upset, that justifies them doing. That's supportive. If I will him back, then he has reason to go out and rebel. See, is that right? But if I don't, and he lays that on me, and I come back to him calmly, not reacting, the light in me shines bright. He has no justification. That light is making him look at what he's doing wrong by his own lights. See? Because if I don't upset him back again, the energy not to see and the energy to rebel is not there. Do you see that? When you're upset, you can't see. When you're upset, you rebel. So then he must look, and he's grateful for me not reacting. Because then he says, he slams the door, comes back in the house, and says, you're right. But I didn't make him see it. That was love. Who understands that? Now, can you practice that on your children? If you did, you have a will, but you're not willful. And if your will is the Father's will, it will be that way. You will resist all wills without being willful. Resentment is the key. Don't be resentful. Other people's wills won't enter, and you won't outwill somebody's will and make them resentful, etc., etc. Question.
Right. When I was real young, I knew I was created for something specifically to do on this earth. And the battle of the wills that you talk about, my lights went out. And I'm 33, and I've been basically the walking dead, you know, for most of my life.
Yes.
And I couldn't connect. And my question before, which you consider, I believe, frivolous, I do not, because I'm still unconnected. You know, like you have your niche, so it's no problem. But someone like me, I don't, and I don't know how to find it.
Oh, you mean the niche in your work?
I know I was created. I can do things and make money, but I have no business there, and I know it. I can feel it. You know what I mean? But I don't know how to get... See, I had it right when I was a kid, and I remember. Right. I mean, I remember it very, very clearly, but I don't remember...
What threw you off balance? What threw you off balance?
I knew what that was, but I don't know how to get back to that surety that I had.
You're saying that Roy Masters has this niche, and he's a teacher.
Yeah,
I
right.
guess I'm a
That's
teacher,
what you were
right?
created for. I can tell it in people. I know what
Well,
it is, you know.
But we're all created teachers. Every person in this room is a minister of the gospel or God. But you have to have the Bible or the truth written in your heart and not quote verses and chapters. Because people, only robot and wind-up toys, see, will be very impressed by verses and chapters and people who are in the know, who pull rank with that kind of knowing. So I don't expect you to be a Bible thumper and one of those so-called Christians or Jews or whatever. That's not going to help your family at all. But I'm saying I'm a minister in my own home long before I was a minister or teacher. A leader, and all men especially must be leaders and teachers in their own home, but by example, by love, not by the force that we're talking about. In other words, I would like my sons to be in my work, but I would also realize that they cannot, I'm coming to your question in a roundabout way, they cannot do what I do except they become a success in their own life. And they must be able to practice what they preach. And they must learn to deal with business situations, give a good measure. You know, don't take advantage of your client, but guide them as if you were, as yourself wanted to be guided, so they can make a profit. Don't take all the profit. Let them make some. See, you know, guide them so they make good decisions, so that the decision is profitable and they're not sorry afterwards. Help them to make their own decision by giving the proper information rather than being a salesperson, which is all the opposite of what the world teaches. But coming to the point, they are doing that now, and they are growing in character. And doing their own thing is very important for you children of light, because it's much better for you to make your own decisions and live and die by your own lights than live by somebody or some boss's light whose light is out. See? It's very frustrating. Most of them have lived only by violence and force, like the Russian. See? They know how to only to dominate because we're all weak. And we respond to the pressure, and we begin to give them, when we begin to think we don't know, and we wimp out to doubt, and we believe in the person that has made us wimp out to doubt. And they don't know either, and we're both, you know, the blind leading the blind, they both fall into the ditch. But coming to the point of finding what is your niche, what is your job? What can a potato farmer say? Or the Australian Aborigine? What can he say about who can be a teacher? Like the Pope. See? Who can be a teacher like a Roy Masters? I have this calling. One of us got through. I got through. Most of you are, you know, are ambulant cases, and most of you will die except you have someone, a redeemer of some kind. And I got through like Moses got through. There's a few of us get through. I don't know how we got through, but a finger must have come down and says, you. And I don't know who, me. I don't know why am I different. I'm not any different from you. I got through, and I don't know why, but that's good Lord's plan, and you recognize I got through, and I'm getting through to you, right? Now, I'm saying, don't worry about your calling. To hell with your calling. Because I don't care where you find yourself, a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, there's always something that will light up and say, I can do that. There's a place here for me. It lit up for me. Nobody's doing what I'm doing. There are people who appear to be doing what I'm doing, but no one's really doing what I'm doing. So I had to really discover what to do. There was no one to teach me except my own spirit. And it taught me what to do, and it teaches me what to say, see, and how to invest, and when to have television programs, and when to cut them off, when to hire and fire, see, that sort of thing. It's guiding me, and the philosophy begins to form as I put one foot in front of the other. But even as a business, I come in contact with people, and in my contacts with people, they see I'm fair, sober, and I have, people always come up to you, even though they don't know that you're a teacher. And I'm a buyer. They don't know I'm a teacher. I'm buying a television camera somewhere. They don't know I'm a teacher. And we get to talking, and I can always find out from people. Some people will always open their hearts to you, and there's a little family problem. And somehow it comes around, and you have a nice little piece of advice to give them, right?
Yeah.
And they say, hey man, how did you know that? I'm a minister. Mark Masters in their real estate. They're always preaching to people about principles and things like that. And pretty soon they've forgotten the real estate and they're talking about problems. And you see, and how to spend their money and being wise and not being too impulsive and be patient. Don't buy this property, wait. If you're not sure, teaching them that. They are ministers. You'll find ministry as a potato farmer. But you won't always stay a potato farmer, because I don't know, if you be a cleaning lady and you could clean so beautifully and become a ballerina cleaning lady, everybody would stop to see your ballerina, your ballet, right? How do you do it so well? Somebody would want you to be, to have a class in how to clean. And you have your own school. One thing always leads to another. One foot in front of the other. Save your money. When you walk into a store with your hard-earned money, that's healthy. With your money, even if you have to work labor for a while, that's good. See, don't hate your boss. Know always
I'm the
that.
boss.
Pardon? Oh well, but let's just spread it to others who may not be their own boss. If you happen to be in a labor camp, that's what it really is. It's a concentration camp when you're working for somebody.
How do you not hate him?
Well, how do you not hate him is another question, but not resent him, learn to be patient, and you see, stop getting your energy from reacting to your work, see? Stop making up for guilt, stop looking for approval, because all these tie you to these emotional things. Now we're coming back to they tie you because you can't get far from the things that you need to emotionally sustain your ego. Yeah. Because if you get far away from them, then you start to feel anxiety and guilt and something's wrong, and even though you hate your work, you have to go back there. So you have to do the thing that kills you. And that's what I'm saying. Sooner or later in your life, if you don't do all these things properly, you'll never work yourself out of work, you'll never work yourself into your own business, and then you'll never work yourself into retirement. Because eventually, if you have your own business, you leave the other jobs for the people that once you did it. See, and then you become a good boss, and you teach them to go into their own business. See, and pretty soon they go up a notch, and the next one comes in, and your business gets bigger. And one day, you'll be retired. But you'll be retired through the wisdom and the spirit of the Creator, and not the wisdom of the government. Because look at all these people who are retired on Social Security. It's pathetic. If they'd followed the path of saving their money and being wise with their money, and going into their own business, or investing in property, instead of it in buying a new car they didn't need, or sending their kids to college, see, which only perverted them, right? Yeah. It's a big nursery school, that's what college is, you know. It's one of those nursery schools where everybody gets sexually molested. And you send your kids to that because you're so compulsive, you don't know how to protect. It's college, at least, you see, and you close your eyes to the rest of what's going on there. Is that right? Okay. Well, anyway, did I get the point? You have a natural retirement after a while, if ever you're wise. But if you're dependent on the government, if you think that you can leave it to the government for your future and then go to Las Vegas and spend all your money because you know that the government's going to give you, your character is going to atrophy. There's no meaning, there's no point, there's no purpose, there's no progress, there's no revelation leading to revelation, and joy and success leading to success. No problems that you're going to solve, not problems you're going to meet because of the journey. And when you, on that journey, the problems will bring up questions, and questions will be forthcoming. In other words, every time you take a step forward, you're creating a problem. If solving one, you're creating another one. But if you create another one, it calls out to you for an answer. And the answer comes to you from within, and that's called character. See? But if you don't become emotionally involved with what you do, it will happen. But if you become emotionally involved in your work, it defeats that process. See? It only builds a pride and the ego. You take pride in your work, you love your work, you hate your work. Either way, there's pride. Isn't that right, Judge?
You get an identity from your work.
You get an identity from your work, and even though you may be successful, you see, it's like Las Vegas. You're successful if it works. It encourages you to invest more of that same, another throw of the dice.
You lose your real identity.
That's right. So that you, even though you may, one of these days you'll become so prideful making these decisions because you think you've got it made, and you make the biggest mistake of your life. It's blinding you. The emotionality, the excitement of achieving is blinding you and involving you deeply. And then when it's all gone, you lost all your money, you lost all your friends. Or even if you have all the money in the world, you begin to see it's a dead end. Because what is the prize? What is the prize in life but character, virtue, a self within a self? See, then that self with a self steps out one day.
I like to use the analogy. I have lizards.
Wait 1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Rush, my darling. I have lizards in my backyard, and for a time last year, I was just not on a log. I couldn't get up to go to work, and I noticed the lizards on cloudy days, they take their energy from the sun. They're cold-blooded creatures, and they take their motivation from the sun. And without the sun, I can catch 12 of them, real easy. But when the sun
That's
is
a very nice analogy.
when
isn't
the
it?
sun is out, I can't catch one, because they got their proper motivation. They're properly motivated lizards.
What are you catching them for?
Well, I'll tell you now. Bringing it to myself, if I'm properly motivated, I can get out and work 12 hours a day.
If
like
you're
effort.
if you're in the sun.
If I'm in
there's
the
an inner light,
inner sun.
inner sun.
There you go.
There
But-
is a lightness, a brightness within a person, and there's a darkness when there's light is not there, and you don't have the right motivation.
Well, the ambition pulls us away from the sun. I mean, our pride, our ambition, greed, and it draws us away from our inner motivation, and then once we're out to the outer
Easily
limits,
caught.
then there's somebody there waiting to catch us and gather us up. But as long as we're connected to our sun inside, nothing can catch us.
Now, do you know why you do that observation, meditation exercise? I'll tell you what happened to me a long time ago when I first started practicing this. I'm talking about 30 years ago, 27 years ago. I'm standing on the street corner. Remember, I'm practicing meditation, and I guess I've always been inwardly motivated. I guess I hadn't practiced meditation for a couple of days and just forgot. I was standing on the street corner, and suddenly I didn't feel like crossing the street. I had to make myself cross the street. I said, this is ridiculous. But you can laugh, but this is the way people are all through life. They take drugs, they take music, they have the coffee achievers, the coffee generation. They drink coffee to emotionally involve themselves.
You need a nagging wife.
They need a nagging wife. They need the pressures. Because they need the pressures, because everything that's external is supportive ego-wise. It supports the selfishness. Even a nagging wife is useful, because she upsets you and you've got enough energy to do whatever it is that you...
But you also
See?
become emotionally involved, so you don't have to look at yourself. If you're emotionally involved with everything else, then you could be a part of everything else, or you could judge everything else, but you don't have to look and see what you are.
Exactly.
You really are.
And now that was the question I asked on the first segment. What value... Now, see, it's much better it comes that way, and I still remember that I asked the question. What value is the emotional involvement besides identity, direction, energy, motivation? It is release from conscience. Because all that is external and stimulating externally, really, and anything that's exciting or upsetting, it catches the ego in its downdraft, and it releases the ego from guilt. At the same time it does that, it nurtures the pride of life and selfishness. A woman is exciting. She's very supportive. You become emotionally involved with that, and you see that men become more selfish. Ladies, haven't you been in love with a man or married a man, and the more you loved him, the more selfish you became? The more you loved your children, the more selfish they become? And then what you've got left is such a selfish little weasel that you feel like stomping on it yourself. Right? And, you know, there's something about selfishness that's ugly. That doesn't look like it deserves to live. It's ugly, isn't it? And yet you created that and you don't know how you've done it.
Yes.
It's with a false compassion called love. It's always making up for guilt.
Yes.
Whenever you're guilty, but God has released you.
Yes.
Remember what you said?
Yeah.
He's released you from having to make up for guilt.
Yeah.
He's redeemed you from the whole process. That's why you feel light. But it's only because you've given up your selfishness. You've given up your pride. Whatever the suffering in your life has made you say, what am I here for?
Yes.
See? Isn't that right?
Yeah.
I've done wrong, and I don't understand how it is that I've done this wrong. I didn't mean to do wrong, but I
just
did it
couldn't
anyway.
figure it out how or why was I so ugly. My inside felt so bad, and
But I have to stop you here because we're going to go off the air. It's very sweet, and I don't mean, she has a lot to say, this lady, but she said her inside felt so bad, but how do you make the inside feel bad? Good again. See, it is either to repent of the sin, to find the threshold where you can be really sorry, and that, sorry means a change of attitude or ego. You can't be sorry honestly and still be egotistical. You can't be sorry honestly and be emotional anymore, because you don't need that emotion to function. A lot of people try to be sorry. You know, I love you, and have these tears, and can't you see I'm sorry? And they're always crying and saying that. Ever seen people who cry and very emotional when they say they're sorry? Don't believe it. They're trying to create their own sorrow. They're trying to create their own change. It's an ego thing. It's an emotional thing. Thinking, see, but it's a worldly sorry. It's a pernicious sorrow. But the kind of sorry that you have is without emotion. When you repent, there won't be a tear in your eye. You'll have the dry heaves, if you pardon the expression. In other words, one of these days you're going to feel like you're crying, but there won't be any tears. Who understands what I'm talking about? It's the soul that cries, and the soul, but the body doesn't envelop itself in emotions to do that. It's free from emotion. You'll never be sorry when you're emotional. You have to snap out of it. That's why I say when people are crying, snap out of it. They snap out of it, and then they can be sorry. Okay? Tomorrow, join us again. Perhaps you'd like to come down and be in the audience. The numbers are on the screen if you'd like to make a reservation on usually Friday nights here, sometimes Wednesday. Call and be a participant financially, because without the money, we can't stay on the air. So start with how to control your emotions and how your mind can keep you well. And the information is on the screen. Thank you very much, and join us again.
Part 3 is next, following this brief message.
The preceding lecture was produced by the Foundation of Human Understanding. For more information, write to the Foundation of Human Understanding at P.O. Box 1009, Grants Pass, Oregon 97526, or call 1-800-877-3227. Thank you.
Foundation of Human Understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the Foundation of Human Understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Hello, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions, and that's about what we're going to continue talking about from now to infinity, I hope, as long as you support the program. And we've been talking about emotional involvements and how dangerous they are, and how we get our strength, our identity, who we are, a sense of worth, even direction, a sense of purpose from those relationships. And actually, what gives life to those relationships is the cause of our death. There's two parts of us. Unlike animals, we have a spirit. What encourages the ego-animal part kills the spirit. It deadens us. So every emotional involvement you have, whether you're involved with a ball game, whether you're involved with a rock and roll, and imagine yourself becoming a rock and roll star like a lot of kids are today. They're crazy, you know, a lot of them kids. They're totally involved in the music, and their ambition now is to become a rock and roll star because that's their identity. You get your identity from your emotional involvement with the music, and in order to go on being that person, because you can't be anything else once you've been corrupted and violated by that music, you cannot be anything except by the idol that seduced you. So you have to get deeper and deeper, more emotionally involved with people, places and things, whether it's rock and roll stars, whether it's your work, whether it's your wife or women. Isn't that right? You know about that.
That's right, that's right. I was just talking to you earlier this evening, you know, and then I came to the realization within me that I had been woman-centered all my life.
And involved.
You know, and I can see where it started from. It started from childhood. It started from a father that was cruel, that would beat me with razor straps, whip me with switches, you know, kick me with a boot. Probably my mother, you know, steered him into that direction, but then I would run to my mother for refuge.
And
See,
then
I would run to my mother for refuge, and there I would find comfort.
All running to the mother trick.
Right. And there I'd find my comfort, and it became a pattern in my life.
Yes.
See, and I married, and my wife was my mother.
And then when she died,
And when
the whole
she
world
died,
fell apart.
My world fell apart, and I found another mother. And then when she left me, I'm deserted, you know.
And
I don't know where to turn. I'm at the bottom. And I would go to any length to support that
woman-centered being.
Right, that woman-centered
Even
being
kill,
in me.
murder. With some people, it depends on what the identity is. You're so desperate because it is a life. You know, if you made a god out of somebody, if you get your support from a person, and your whole life revolves around that person, and that person dies or cheats on you and walks away from you, then who you are is fractured. What happens is you discover that you're nothing. All the time you didn't know that you were nothing. You thought you were something. And you successfully eluded the knowing that you were nothing by the lie, the emotional involvement, which comes in through the emotionally sustained lies, the illusion that you are something you're not. That's called ego. And so that as long as we have emotional nurturing, no matter what it is, rock and roll, wife, anything, as long as we have it, our ego continues to grow dependent. Doesn't grow, it grows ugly.
And then you become resentful at yourself.
You get resentful over realizing what a fool you are,
Right.
because you see, there's something about your ego that does not love reality. It loves the illusion and the illusion provider. And in worshiping and involving yourself deeper in the provider, you take your identity from that. And actually, what you're dealing with is not good but evil. And that's what you're becoming behind the mask of everybody who pretends to love you, who allows you the luxury of the flesh, of the involvement, the escape into that person, the renewing of self, selfish self. Hear the word? Selfish, ego, selfish, self. A self that doesn't feel guilty, feeling selfish. See, it doesn't feel guilt because it's escaping. It's releasing. It's being released from guilt while it's becoming more selfish and doesn't know selfish is how wrong it is. But behind the mask of that person, behind the facade, is evil. Is that right or not? Did you find that?
That's true there.